All right, welcome to today's explainer. So let's just dive right in. Picture this. You drop a single pebble into a perfectly still pond. What happens? You get a splash, right? And then these ripples expand outward, traveling further and further until they touch every single edge of the water. Well, history works exactly the same way. Today, we're exploring a totally fascinating historical ripple effect. It started with a really controversial change in leadership rules over 1,000 years ago, caused a massive splash on a desert battlefield, and sent out ripples that literally changed political systems and religious traditions around the world forever. We're going to uncover the incredible history behind the Battle of Karbala.
So here's our roadmap for today. 1. Changing the leadership rules. 2. A refusal to agree. 3. The standoff at Karbala. 4. The political fallout. And 5. A tradition of remembrance. Let's get right to it.
Section 1. Changing the leadership rules.
Okay, to really get what went down here, we need to travel back to the late 600s. The Muslim community was facing a massive political crisis. Basically, they completely changed how they chose their leaders. Before this, they generally used a system called shura, which just means consultation. Think of it like voting for your student council president, right? Everyone gets a say, the community is consulted, and the best person gets the job. But then, the Umayyad Caliph, a ruler named Muawiyah, makes a hugely controversial move. He actually breaks an existing peace treaty to nominate his own son Yazid to be the next ruler. So he's transforming a consultative government into a hereditary monarchy. Going back to our school analogy, it's literally like the principal suddenly saying, hey, my kid is the new student council president forever, without asking anyone else. As you can guess, this complete lack of consultation caused some immediate, massive outrage.
Section 2. A refusal to agree. Now this brings us to Hussein ibn Ali. He was the grandson of the Islamic prophet Muhammad. And because of who he was and his deep sense of justice, he saw this new monarchy as completely unfair and totally against his community's principles. When Yazid demanded absolute loyalty, Hussein flat out refused. In May of 680, Hussein traveled to Mecca, and while he was there, he started getting letters, hundreds of them, from people in Kufa, a garrison town in Iraq. The folks there were totally exhausted by the oppressive Umayyad rule, and they practically begged Hussein to come lead a revolt. Hussein felt it was his duty to stand up for justice, so in September, he sets out across the harsh Arabian desert with a really small caravan, mostly just his family and close friends. But the Umayyad rulers caught wind of it. On October 2nd, Yazid's forces intercepted Hussein's tiny group and forced them to set up camp on a desolate plain, a plain called Karbala.
Section 3. The standoff at Karbala. So Hussein's caravan is completely trapped. They're surrounded by an Umayyad army commanded by a man named Umar ibn Sa'd. And just look at these numbers. It's wild. Hussein had a tiny group, maybe 70 to 145 men, to protect his whole family, including women and children. Against that, a massive, heavily armed military force of over 4,000 soldiers. Talk about a David versus Goliath situation, right? To make things even worse, the Umayyad army actually blocked Hussein's camp from reaching the nearby Euphrates River, trying to force him to give up and submit to Yazid. So for 3 agonizing days, this little caravan of family and friends was stuck in the scorching desert without a single drop of water. Even with the unbearable thirst and this giant army staring him down, Hussein firmly held his ground. On the morning of October 10th, the battle started. Historical accounts tell us that Hussein's tiny force fought with unbelievable courage, but, they were just vastly outnumbered. By the end of the day, Hussein, along with most of his relatives and companions, was killed. The surviving women and children were taken prisoner. Hussein essentially made the ultimate sacrifice. He chose to lay down his life rather than endorse a system he believed was fundamentally unjust. Section 4. The political fallout. Okay, so here is the immediate splash from that pebble we talked about earlier. The tragedy at Karbala absolutely shocked the entire Muslim community. The fact that the Prophet's grandson was killed so brutally by Yazid's army caused a huge political uproar. This kicked off a civil war, known as the Second Fitna. One of the first major reactions came from a group known as the Tawabin. That translates to the penitents. Basically, these were the folks from Kufa who felt this immense, crushing guilt. Remember, they were the ones who wrote the letters begging Hussein to come, but when he was intercepted, they hadn't ridden out to help. So to right that wrong, about 4,000 of them marched against the Umayyad army under the slogan, "Revenge for Hussein." They knew they were probably going to lose, but they demanded justice anyway. That one act of bravery sparked an incredible chain reaction. Step 1. The Tawabin uprising proved that regular people were actually willing to fight the unjust government. Even though they were defeated, they paved the way for Step 2. A leader named Mukhtar al-Thaqafi took up the cause, successfully overthrew the local governor, and actually took control of Kufa, punishing the people responsible for Karbala. And then Step 3. The revolutionary momentum just didn't stop. Hussein's stand continued to inspire rebellions for decades, which eventually played a massive role in completely toppling the entire Umayyad dynasty. Section 5. A tradition of remembrance. Now we get to the outermost ripples. How this single historic day permanently transformed the religious identity of Shia Muslims. Let me ask you something. How do you remember a hero? Like, if someone did something unbelievably brave, standing up for what's right when everyone else was terrified, how do you make sure people 100 or even 1,000 years later still know their story?
Would you tell stories, write plays, build monuments?
Well, that is exactly what happened. Before Karbala, the followers of Hussein's family were mostly a political group. But this tragedy transformed them into a distinct religious sect with deeply emotional rituals to keep the memory alive. For example, there's Ashura, which is on the 10th day of the Islamic month of Muharram, the anniversary of the battle. Millions of Shia Muslims hold observances on this day. Then you have Arba'in, a massive pilgrimage to Hussein's tomb 40 days later. All year round, they hold majlis, special gatherings just to sit and listen to the stories so no one ever forgets. In places like Iran, they even put on tazia. These are literal stage plays recreating the battle, which is such a powerful way to teach young learners about right and wrong. And finally, they hold these elaborate public processions in the streets.
So, why does all this matter today? Researchers call this the Karbala paradigm, and it serves three very important roles in the modern world. Slice 1, heroic norms and ethics. For everyday life, learning about Hussein teaches moral behavior. It is the ultimate lesson in standing up to bullies, no matter how big they are. Slice 2 is religious identity. This shared mourning and storytelling forms the absolute core of what it means to be a Shia Muslim today. And slice 3 is political resistance. Throughout the 20th and 21st centuries, whenever people have faced tyranny or oppression, they've looked right back at Hussein's stand as the ultimate inspiration to resist.
Let's wrap up with this really powerful thought from historical analysts. Hussein remains, quote, a symbol of sacrifice in the struggle for right against wrong and for justice and truth against injustice and falsehood. Just think about that ripple effect. A political disagreement over how a leader should be chosen led a tiny group to make a stand in the desert. They lost the battle, but their bravery sent out ripples of inspiration that have lasted for over 1,300 years, teaching millions of people the importance of standing up for what's right. So I'll leave you with this to think about. What ripples are you creating when you choose to stand up for justice in your own life? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.